On November 11th, tens of thousands of Canadians will gather at the National War Memorial here in Ottawa. They will be there to honor the sacrifice of those who served this country during wartime. And each year we also honor the Silver Cross Mother, chosen by the Royal Canadian Legion to represent all mothers who have lost a son or daughter who served Canada. But there's something different this year. For the first time, the Legion has designated the mother of a soldier who took his own life to be the Silver Cross Mother. Private Thomas Welch served this country in Afghanistan in 2003. He took his own life on May 8, 2004 in Petawawa, Ontario at the age of just 22. He was the first Canadian soldier returning from Afghanistan to take his own life. There would be at least 70 others during the past 15 years. His mother, this year's Silver Cross Mother, Anita Cenerini, joins me from Winnipeg. Ms. Cenerini, first of all, may I offer my condolences to you on the loss of your son, and at the same time recognize his service to this country, and thank you for agreeing to speak with me today.
Thank you very much.
This has been a long journey for you that began with the fight to obtain full military honors for your son after his death, and I think it's important to start the conversation there if I can, so that we get a full picture of how far you've come. Let me start there. How did the military deal with your son's death in the immediate aftermath of his death?
Well, they dealt with his death respectfully, and Thomas's funeral was one with honors. They just, however, didn't attribute his death to service, particularly service in Afghanistan. His death was ruled as a suicide, and simply as a suicide.
But as I understand it, the military, as you say, didn't recognize that his suicide was connected to his service. He was not given the Memorial Cross at that time, as I understand it, given to the families of fallen, and his name was not added to the Book of Remembrance, which includes the names of soldiers who died serving Canada at that time. What was that like for your family?
It was devastating because we knew that Thomas was affected. He was impacted by his service in Afghanistan. We knew that he was suffering emotionally, psychologically when he came home from Afghanistan. We were frustrated with the fact that our story as a family, our voice, was not being heard. But at a time when you're in such profound grief, it's difficult to act in a vigilant or assertive manner to try to have things changed. So I kind of took the position of individual letter writing or speaking with individual military personnel, trying to have Thomas's story heard, to be the voice of Thomas. But I quickly realized that the story wasn't going to change the minds of the people who I was talking to.
It turned out to be an investigation by, I guess, the Globe and Mail that forced the government to take a look at your son's case, and they did. And what happened then?
They started in 2015 working with me, and we didn't get any documents from the military in that time. 16 months later, the Globe and Mail went ahead and published my son's story. And a week after Thomas's story was published, I received a phone call from the military, which brought me to a table with them. And they presented the findings of their investigation, and I presented the facts and Thomas's story. And those facts and Thomas's story were sent up to Veterans Affairs, and 3 days later, Thomas's death was reclassified as being not just attributable to service, but specifically to his tour in Afghanistan.
Are there lessons in your son's story and your family's story, your fight in his name, that have changed the way the military now supports the soldiers who served in Afghanistan and who may come back with all of those scars of service that aren't necessarily visible?
Yes, I think there is a lesson, and the lesson is the voices that need to be heard. The voices, first of all, of the soldiers, the voices of the family, and to have those voices really heard, to act on what they hear, and to believe that, that the soldiers and the families are coming out and speaking the stories that they are, because they want to see change, because they want help.
And why do you believe it's important that you have been chosen as this year's Silver Cross Mother? What is the message that sends about, I guess, about the true nature of serving your country and the wounds that can cause?
Absolutely, because I'm the first Silver Cross Mother to have lost a child in service to our country by suicide, that the message that I hope goes out from my appointment is that the psychological injuries of a soldier are just as important as the physical injuries that they may come home from battle or conflict with, and that because a soldier doesn't die on the battlefield or overseas, but comes home and dies from the psychological injuries, does not lessen the fact that he is a hero. He has died a hero's death in service to his country, and that needs to be recognized. And the shame and the stigma associated with suicide in our country, but in our military, needs to be stripped away, so that these soldiers and their families aren't pushed into the isolation that they often find themselves in, and having to cope on their own, trying to do their best in healing from these psychological wounds that they have attained through their service to their country.
Let me finish on this. What is it? I guess I'm thinking you've thought about what it's going to be like to be there at the National War Memorial, to place that wreath on behalf of all Silver Cross mothers. What do you think you'll be thinking of in that moment?
I'm going to be thinking of every soldier who has lost their life in service to our country. I'm going to be thinking of all the Silver Cross mothers who have lost a son or daughter in service to our country. But I'm going to be thinking about the ill and injured soldiers who still struggle with their psychological illness or injuries, or physical illness or injury. And I'm going to think about the veterans who have been displaced because of psychological injury or illness. I'm going to think about the families who still stand by them, who support them and love them.
And let me say, I think we'll be thinking of you as we watch that ceremony as well on Remembrance Day. Anita Cenerini, again, thank you for your time tonight, and again, my condolences on the loss of your son.
Thank you so much.